You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and I am joined by somebody who I have wanted to get on this podcast since June 2020 when we started this thing. And here it is, almost June 2022, and we finally got him. And I could list his accomplishments and accolades, but you know what? He is a theme park journalist. He's written numerous articles for USA Today, About.com, which is now Trip Savvy, all around great guy and one of the most interesting Twitter follows out there. Arthur Levine is on the podcast this week. Arthur, how are you?
I am fine. And thanks so much for inviting me on the podcast, Andrew. I'm looking forward to talking with you and sharing some new things that I'm doing.
I love it. That's what we're here for. But before we get into those new things, we got to get into some old things as well. And in case our audience has no idea the name Arthur Levine, which, first of all, shame on you, audience. You should know this guy by now. But who is Arthur Levine?
Arthur Levine is a guy who absolutely loves theme parks and roller coasters and amusement parks and attractions and themed entertainment and anything and everything to do with the industry, as I know you do as well, Andrew, and I would imagine virtually everybody listening to this podcast. What maybe distinguishes me a bit from the folks listening is that I kind of turned my avocation into my vocation and became as you said, a theme park journalist. So I've been trying my best to make a living at doing what I love, and am now in my 30th year doing this. And that's who I am. I'm a guy who writes about parks and shares his joy with others.
Yes, and if you dig into the Coaster101 archives, I believe it was Eric who did a really, really in-depth interview with Arthur. But is it true that you kind of stumbled upon your first writing gig? You found this magazine and you convinced the editor to just let you write about amusement parks?
That is absolutely true. And that was 30 years ago, as I just said. I always loved parks, as I said, and was kind of trying to figure out a way to get into the industry, which was a little tough for me living in Massachusetts. It's not exactly the epicenter of the theme park industry. And one day, I happened to be looking at a magazine stand, something that doesn't exist anymore because journalism has changed radically in the 30 years I've been doing this. But I was looking at a magazine stand and I saw the Cinderella Castle, the castle at Walt Disney World, on the cover of this magazine. Caught my eye, picked it up. Turned out to be a magazine about animation, about people who collect animation art. And I read the cover story, which was about Walt Disney World and its connection somehow to animation, and saw an advertisement in this magazine by the publisher who was going to be publishing a new magazine called Theme Park. And then I discovered it was going to be published in southern New Hampshire. I live in northern Massachusetts, and I thought, wow, this sounds like something I might enjoy doing. So yeah, as you said, I just kind of badgered this guy until he relented and ended up writing the cover story about Back to the Future. And Back to the Future, the attraction at Universal Studios Florida. Mm-hmm. And had the thrill of interviewing Doug Trumbull, who is the father of the motion simulator and the guy who created the media for the Back to the Future attraction, who was heavily involved in the motion picture industry, did the special effects for 2001, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all kinds of other wonderful movies, also a director, but got fed up with Hollywood because they wouldn't embrace his, at the time, revolutionary ideas about high frame rate and high resolution, and literally went across the country, settled in Massachusetts, so I had the opportunity to interview him, but then entered the theme park industry, which embraced his ideas for high resolution and high frame rate, and did things like the Back to the Future attraction at Universal Studios.
I love it. And, over those 30 years, you've built a pretty, I'm going to call it very impressive. I like to call them like your scoops, because you get these you get to break the news for USA Today and other outlets more so than a lot of other people I've seen. I know you're one of the first people to ride Wonder Woman at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. You got to break the news of Defiance coming to Glenwood Caverns. But over the years, what are some other memorable stories and exclusives? And how do I get invited to these Arthur exclusive stories? And I'll sit in the second row while you ride in the first row on the first ride. I just kind of want to be there and hang out. But
well, you mentioned Wonder Woman Golden Lasso at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I not only got to be the first person outside of the company to ride that coaster and write about it, but I actually broke the announcement when they made the announcement about the RMC's new single rail coaster design. And what a thrill that was. And I happened to be there the day that I rode this. The park was closed. And one of the cool things I got to do, in addition to riding that coaster, Jeffrey Siebert, the president there, knows that I love Iron Rattler, and opened it up, and the two of us, because there was nobody else in the park, got to ride it together. And man, oh man, what a thrill that was. Some other stories I got to break. I was the first person to ride Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and then got to talk about it on CBS This Morning. So that was quite a thrill. Also was the first person to ride Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, and then more recently Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. And so these were really kind of wonderful experiences for me to get to be the first to experience these things, but also to get to know the people who design these rides, to get to know the folks at the park, and go behind the scenes. And it's just been 30 years, just an incredible adventure that I've been on, a great ride that I've been on, if you will. So those are some of the things, some of the breaking stories that I've done. I've been involved in, I've been invited to bazillions of media events, and have gotten to go to Disney World and Universal. I was there for the opening of Islands of Adventure, for example, the opening of the Animal Kingdom. But I've been able to do all kinds of other really cool things too. Like I was invited by Imagineering to visit their Glendale, California headquarters. They have this program called Insight Out, INSIGHT, where they invite people outside of the company to come in and talk to the Imagineers. And so my job, when I was invited there, was to talk about things that were happening in the industry outside of Disney, to let the Imagineers know what's kind of going on in the industry. I remember my wife saying to me, "Wait a minute, you're going to go to Imagineering, to Walt Disney Imagineering, and you're going to talk to them about the theme park industry?" She thought that was insane, and it was kind of insane. But there was Tony Baxter in the audience, and Joe Rohde, and all these people that I that I adore and kind of idolize, and here I am talking to them about the industry. So that was quite a thrill. And through the years, I've had the opportunity to interview folks like Tony Baxter, Bob Gurr, Marty Sklar. These are all veteran Imagineers. Marty's no longer with us. What a wonderful gentleman he was. Thierry Koo from Universal. All these people I've had the great fortune to interview and to get to know at some level, and that's just been some of the things that I've been able to do in these 30 years.
It's been a roller coaster, forgive the pun. So
It's been a roller coaster. Yeah, speaking of roller coasters, I got to do the coolest thing last summer. One of the coolest things, I think. I'm good friends with the folks at Dino's Wonder Wheel Park at Coney Island,
mhm.
and uh, I had told the folks there that I always wanted to operate a roller coaster. That's been a lifelong dream of mine. And so they opened Phoenix last year, and they said, let's make your dream come true. And I got to actually operate the roller coaster, and that was everything I thought it would be, and then some.
I love it. That is, I remember there was a story written about that, and we will definitely 100% link that in the show notes. Arthur, to be fair, and you did hint at this earlier, journalism is an ever evolving medium. And you have recently, again, you have your stories in USA Today and Amusement Today and Trip Savvy and all these places, but you've recently began this new medium of communication. What can you tell us about your Substack newsletter?
I feel like I should just make a slight correction. I've never written
Okay.
for Amusement Today.
Oh,
I have written for Fun World, which is
that's
IAPA's publication. That could be what you're
that's
thinking of. Yeah.
exactly what I'm thinking of. I always get those two confused.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And Fun World, for folks that don't know, is the magazine and the online publication for IAPA, and it gives me the opportunity to write about the business side of the industry. Everything else that I do is for consumers and a general audience. But yes, Andrew, in the 30 years that I've been doing this, journalism has evolved considerably. I joke sometimes about, 30 years ago, I wrote for this magazine, and I don't even know if people know what magazines are anymore. And they are quickly shutting down and folding, and in some cases going online, and in some cases going away altogether. Newspapers, it's the same thing. They're contracting at an alarming rate, and many mid-size and even larger communities are losing newspapers, and it's just kind of astonishing for me to see as a journalist. It's even more astonishing to try to be a freelance journalist or to be a journalist of any kind these days. So I did just a few weeks ago what many journalists have been doing, and I went over to Substack, which Substack, and I have my own newsletter there, my own website through Substack, and I kind of control my destiny now, as opposed to writing for third parties like USA Today or the New York Post or Vox Media or About.com or Trip Savvy. I now write for myself. And the model at Substack is this. It is a direct-to-reader, a direct-to-consumer model where people subscribe to my newsletter, and then they receive directly in their email inbox my newsletter. And there are no ads on Substack. It's totally ad-free. And the way it works is people are free to become a subscriber at no cost, or if they elect to support the writing that I do, there are different levels at which they can subscribe, and they get different bonus content and the ability to participate in the conversation based on the level of their subscription. So as I said, it's kind of a direct-to-reader, a direct-to-consumer model where I send my stories directly to people, and if they choose to support me, they can directly support me, and we're just bypassing the middle person of the newspaper or the website. It's just this direct relationship. So I began this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and twice a week I am writing articles. And the beauty is that it is whatever I want to write. I have total editorial control. I can write as little or as much as I want. I can write whenever I want, and I'm absolutely having a ball doing this. No longer do I have to pitch stories to editors, or worry about things like word count, or worry about editors editing the life out of my stories. I have total control now, and I don't have to worry about things like clickbait. There's no search engine optimization silliness. There's no gratuitous negativity. There's no need to generate artificial controversy to get people to click on to my content. These are just people who are like-minded people, enjoy what I write, in this case, theme parks and amusement parks and roller coasters and the amusement industry. And I apply the same kind of editorial integrity that I always have when I was writing for USA Today or any of these other publications. It's just that I'm now doing it for myself and for my readers.
I love it. And, I am a subscriber. I will eventually become a paid subscriber. I'm going to admit to that right now. I did sign up. I jumped on at the free level, but I'll get there eventually. I promise. I'm looking you in the eye when I say this, but
I appreciate you saying that, Andrew, and I don't want anybody to think that, it's absolutely fine if you want to be a free subscriber. At this point, I'm just looking to get as many people reading my content as possible. And, well into the future, if people want to remain free subscribers, that's fine. Hopefully, I'm offering something of value in terms of the bonus content and the ability to join the conversation. And if people elect to do that and elect to support this ad-free publication, I'd be most appreciative. But I'm appreciative for anybody coming on board and joining, coming along for the ride, as I say.
Yeah, and as someone who's been reading your work for years, it is, I can safely say it's that same level of detail and professionalism and industry knowledge that you don't really get, if somebody is, for example, with no offense to anybody who writes about Disney parks, when a publication sends somebody out there who doesn't really know the theme park space. The thing is, Arthur knows the theme park space, and if it's writing about Icebreaker or the new attractions coming to Coney Island, it's every story, and Arthur knows the players, knows the game, and it comes through in this newsletter. I do want to talk about a more recent issue that came through on the 19th of May. And this will come out, actually, this podcast will come out the 23rd. So it is one of the more recent, what is an issue of the Substack newsletter? Is that the best way to describe it?
I've been calling it an edition. I'm not really sure what to call it, to be honest with you, Andrew. It's a bit of a new territory for me. Before we jump into that, I just want to say that people who are interested in becoming subscribers, all they have to do is go to About Theme Parks. That's ABOUT, themeparks.fun. That's FUN. I discovered that the URL fun is actually available. So it's About themeparks.fun. Then they just have to type in their email address, choose their subscription level, and twice a week they'll be getting my stories in their inbox.
I love it. And I would promise you I was going to get to that, and I
know you were.
I'll include it in the show notes. I'll mention it again at the end of the show, but again, about themeparks.fun. You will get a twice weekly dose of Arthur Levine talking theme parks, thrill rides, roller coasters, and all around fun, which is, again, the website domain itself. But one of the most recent newsletters, you and I, we've got to talk about this because you've been on it, you've experienced it. Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. Tell me everything. I'm not looking at YouTube videos. TikTok right now is a minefield of people who are like, I get to ride it and I get to do all this. And I've seen the video of Chris Pratt saying, oh, I really love all these classic Epcot attractions. But let's talk Cosmic Rewind. Is it, as people have said, the best roller coaster / attraction at Walt Disney World?
I don't know if I'd say it's the best. I think I still have to give that to Rise of the Resistance. And I'm not sure that I would necessarily say it's the second best. That may or may not be the ride at Help me out here, Andrew.
Flight of Passage.
Flight of Passage, exactly. Yes, yes. At Disney's Animal Kingdom in the Pandora, the World of Avatar. But I would safely put this in the third position,
Okay.
possibly the second position. I'm still kind of mulling that over. It is a fabulous attraction, and it's a little bit difficult to talk about in terms of it being a roller coaster, because it's not just a roller coaster.
Right.
And it kind of raises an interesting point, and I think what will probably be a future Substack article for me on Arthur's About Theme Parks, and that is people have often asked me, "What's your favorite roller coaster?" Because I write about what I write about. I'm sure you get the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And know that you have endless endless debates about it, and constantly are changing them around. I've always I used to have two categories. There was the best wooden coasters and the best steel coasters. More recently, I came up with the best hybrid wooden steel coasters because of what RMC is doing. I didn't feel it was fair to classify them as either wood or steel. But I think we need I need anyways, a new fourth category now, and that's themed coasters. Because this is clearly a themed roller coaster, and the history of themed coasters, goes back to Space Mountain and even earlier, perhaps, where it's not just about the coaster thrills, but it's telling a story in an immersive themed environment, and to varying degrees. Parks and attraction designers have incorporated levels of storytelling to layer on top of the coaster experience. There are some wonderful themed coasters out there. Revenge of the Mummy kind of comes to mind as being one of them. And there are many others. Expedition Everest is another one. But in many cases, the actual coaster experience, and Revenge of the Mummy is a good example, the first part of it, you're kind of very slowly going through the show building. I believe the technology is known as SLIMs. They're slow linear induction motors that are taking you through the first part of the Mummy, and that's where most of the themed storytelling takes place. You're going quite slowly, almost as if you were, on any kind of dark ride. Then the second half of the ride, the coaster takes off, and there's some minimal theming while you're going at high speeds. What Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind does so well is that it combines the high-speed, high-thrill coaster experience with immersive theming while you're going 50, 55, 60 miles an hour. We don't really know what the speed is, but you're seeing the same kind of giant screen, immersive storytelling that you see on things like Gringotts or the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Shanghai Disneyland, or some of these other highly themed, really sophisticated e-ticket dark rides. But you're experiencing that while you're going at enormously fast speeds on the roller coaster. It's something I've dreamt about ever since I went on Space Mountain and then started seeing these highly sophisticated e-ticket rides. What if you could truly marry the two? Well, Disney has done it. And to me, it is such an incredible achievement. But again, it's a little difficult to kind of talk about it. If you ask me what's the best roller coaster in Florida, I have to qualify it. Mm-hmm. From a pure coaster experience, and I think I would probably say it's Iron Gwazi. That would be my choice right now. But if you talk about the overall experience, the entire attraction, my goodness, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, when you combine the theme storytelling with the coaster experience, it is just a mind-blowing, mind-boggling experience. Just absolutely blew me away. And one thing I will tell you, I know that you know about this, and I know that virtually all the listeners here know about this as well, but one of the innovations that Vekoma and Disney developed for this is the so-called OmniCoaster element. The OmniCoaster capabilities that the cars have, borrowing from the Omni Mover ride system that Disney uses for the Haunted Mansion and many other attractions, which have the ability to pivot passengers in the direction of the storytelling action. They sort of want to help you focus on whatever it is that's happening at the moment in the attraction to help tell this linear story. So the Omni Coaster, similarly, is able to pivot the car and point you in the direction of what Disney and the Imagineers want you to see at that very moment in the coaster. And it works like a charm in terms of storytelling. You encircle the Milky Way, and you see these giant images of the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, and that slight pivot, really works. But if you strip away all the theming, that Omni Coaster pivoting sensation makes for an entirely new physical coaster experience as well. It's something I've never felt before on a roller coaster. For example, there is this one section where you're pivoting what's supposed to be the formation of the Earth, I believe, and this is kind of like the Big Bang, and so you're doing not quite an entire helix, but maybe, I don't know, 270 degrees. And as you're circling the Earth, the representation of the Earth with this beautiful themed element that Disney has designed, the coaster car is pivoting just slightly in the direction of the helix. And so the sensation, as I spoke with Tom Fitzgerald, one of the Imagineers at Disney, about this, he said to him it's kind of like snowboarding. You're kind of leaning into the curve, and it's something that coaster fans will have never experienced until they get on this ride. So, even taking away all of the theming, Disney and Vekoma have come up with kind of this new way to experience a roller coaster, which I got a huge kick out of.
I love it. And I love how you were so spoiler free there. That was the greatest. The description was perfect, but you didn't spoil any key information for me or any other listeners. So I really, really appreciate that. But I do need to get back down to Florida. I haven't been since pre-pandemic to Disney World. So there's a lot going on that I have yet to experience.
You might want to wait till Tron opens. That's part of the problem with all of these new attractions coming online. If you haven't been for a while and something is just around the corner, you might want to just hang on for a bit longer.
That's a good point.
But yeah, there are some great, just wonderful attractions at Disney World. But this is extraordinary.
Good
really
deal.
Just an extraordinary attraction.
What about other coasters and attractions that are opening in 2022? Obviously, we've had the 2020 SeaWorld coasters, your Icebreaker, Iron Gwazi, Emperor, Pantheon, and side note, Arthur has a really, really good review of Pantheon and everything, ranking the Busch Gardens coasters. We will link that in the show notes as well. Our rankings at Busch Gardens differ a little bit, but I'm not going to hold that against anybody except Eric Woolley on our team because anyway. But are there any other new attractions that either you have gotten on or you're really excited for this year? I know I'm actually going to get to ride a new for 2022 coaster this weekend up at Adventureland in Long Island. Going to get on Fireball, that is soft opening, which is the first of its kind. But is there anything else that either has opened or hasn't opened that you're particularly excited about this year?
Well, you mentioned Pantheon, and yes, I did get to experience that a few weeks ago. And I heard your podcast where you talked about it. You've had the opportunity to ride it as well. and I think we were both similarly impressed. As you said, I recently wrote about this, and not only wrote about Pantheon, but all of the coasters at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, which is a wonderful park, and I know you and I agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I put Pantheon at the very top. And that's saying a lot because I love the coasters at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, and was really, really impressed with Pantheon. I'm generally not a huge fan of the multi-pass, multi-launch coasters. Until I got on Pantheon, and then I saw, well, yeah, there's a way to do this and do it well,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a great job. Although I have to say, Icebreaker at SeaWorld, not nearly as tall or as fast or as extreme as Pantheon, and from a different manufacturer, Premier, but also does a multi-pass, multi-launch coaster concept pretty well. I thought that was a great coaster as well.
Nice. Very excited. Okay, while I've got you, and I know there's going to be a point where the audience tunes out, and this might be that point. But you and I, we have this common interest outside of theme parks, and it is professional wrestling. I got to know what's your story when it comes to being a fan of professional wrestling in the industry, and then I've got another theme park. I'll get back to theme parks in a second, but I got to talk about your professional wrestling fandom.
I suspect there will be some people who might tune out, but I bet that there will be a surprising number of people who are going to stick around for our conversation about this, because it's my contention that there's a huge crossover between folks who are professional wrestling fans and folks who love theme parks and amusement parks and coasters. And in fact, the evidence sort of bears that out when you just look at some famous professional wrestlers who love theme parks. Cody Rhodes is one of them. Mick Foley is another. I had the opportunity to interview Mick when he wrote his first book. I read the book and then was astonished when I came to the chapter where he was talking about his love of Santa's Village up in New Hampshire, this tiny amusement park up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire that I adore, but not as much as Mick Foley adores it, apparently. He actually went there in the off season. Once he was wrestling in the Boston area, I think, and it was February, and it gets a little cold and there's an awful lot of snow up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire in February, but he somehow convinced the owners to open the park and let him in, and he trudged through the snow in his, what I can only assume were very tall boots, just to walk around and just to be there, because he went there as a kid and loved the place, and loves many other amusement parks as well, and many other coasters. Famously, just a huge park fan. But I had this great opportunity to interview him way back then when his book came out, and he got a kick out of it because he said, everybody that wanted to interview him wanted to talk about wrestling, which I did as well. But that's not my beat. I talked about parks, and he said I was the first person to do that. So that was kind of neat. For me, it's a little similar to theme parks in that, inexplicably, I've loved professional wrestling ever since I was a little kid, and just never stopped loving it. A lot of people perhaps grow out of it, but when it comes to parks and wrestling and other things, but we'll stick with those two right now. I just have never lost my childhood love and have this, this wide-eyed wonder when it comes to both parks and wrestling. I'm absolutely thrilled to see what's happened with the industry recently with the introduction of AEW, and that's really rekindled my interest. I was getting maybe a little bored with WWE, and felt it was a little homogenized and a little too scripted, and but AEW's just letting the wrestlers do their thing and get on the mic and just say what they want to say from their heart. And the level of wrestling that's on AEW, the athleticism and the elegance and the just the sheer beauty of it, it just amazes me. And so What can I say? I'm an unabashed professional wrestling fan, much to the horror and chagrin of my wife and other people in my family, but the hell with them. I
Hey,
love it. I love it, and that's that's the way it is. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with parks, Andrew. Many years ago, we might have been shunned as geeks and nerds, and been relegated to the corner of the mass culture, perhaps. But these days, with things like the internet and podcasts and Substack newsletters, we can find our own communities, and we can geek out together. And there's no shame in that. And I wear my fandom loudly and proudly when it comes to wrestling and when it comes to theme parks.
I love it. Yeah, and I've had you mention Cody Rhodes. I interviewed him right after he came out of WWE the first time, as he was kind of on the independent circuit. Now he's back in WWE. I interviewed Matt Cardona, who's got his own theme park podcast now with his wife, Chelsea. Have interviewed Matt Raywalt, who is a commentator now for Impact Wrestling, who happened to follow us on Twitter during the pandemic. And every time you see somebody with like a blue verified check follow you on Twitter, you're like, huh, who's that? And then you're like, wait a minute, that's Aiden English, the guy with the mic and Rusev Day and all this good stuff. But it is so cool to see that there is this crossover, not only between wrestling fans and theme park fans, but between wrestlers and theme parks as well. And I know there's a lot of benefit with WWE's NXT kind of developmental running in Orlando, adjacent to all the Orlando theme parks, and then AEW kind of the same way. It's a couple hours north in Jacksonville, but Florida is right there. But do you think it is that kind of suspension of disbelief that kind of results in so much of the kind of the crossover between not only the fans but the wrestlers themselves?
I guess. I mean, there's kind of they both have roots maybe in carnivals and midways, and carny talk, and when you talk to wrestlers, there's language like marks and all these things that you would find back in. Not back in, but currently in the world of carnivals and circuses, and there's some common ground there with amusement parks and theme parks, and it goes both ways too. We were talking about some wrestlers who love parks. There are people involved in parks who love wrestling. Mike Aiello is famously one of them. The guy who does so much at Universal Orlando, just a brilliant, wonderful guy. Absolutely adores and loves theme parks, and lets the world know about that on Twitter and elsewhere. So I can't say for sure, with any certainty, whether there's some kind of gene we all possess that somehow, clicks on and says, well, you're going to love theme parks and professional wrestling, but there seems to be an awful lot of us out there.
I love it. Yeah. And I don't think we're stuck in the corner. We might still be kind of leaned up against the back wall as everything else is going on. But you know what? We're here for it. We love it. We appreciate it. And there are dozens of us, and probably more than that, honestly. But that's...
yeah, way more than dozens, I think. But yes, I know what you're saying.
I love it. Anything else in the industry right now that you're seeing that we want to talk about before we kind of put a bow on this podcast? And I plug aboutthemeparks.fun and your Twitter account and anywhere else we can find you. Anything else you want to tell our audience or educate our audience about?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that, but I will say this, that 30 years ago, when I began writing about the industry, certainly places like Walt Disney World and to a degree Universal, although they were just kind of starting their journey back then, were very popular. But in the intervening 30 years, they've only become enormously popular, building additional parks. I mean, here we are on the precipice of Universal building a third park in Florida. And I think in the intervening 30 years, the popularity of parks and their influence across so many different industries, whether it's shopping malls or cruise ships or hotels or casinos, can be seen everywhere. And I mean, look what's happening at Disney World. They have what I believe to be a relatively big problem on their hands. They're just too damn popular. And they keep trying to come up with strategies uh, to moderate the crowds and to control the experience, whether it's Disney Genie or Genie Plus or Fast Passes, and they have varying degrees of success. But what it comes down to is just the demand is so damn high that it's really difficult to control the experience. There's only so much capacity there, and they can only build so many parks, I guess, to meet the demand. The point that I'm making is this industry has become more and more popular, which is great for diehard fans like us. Sure, a lot of the folks are sort of more casual fans, and they maybe help support the industry so the rest of us can experience things like Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind or Tron or all these wonderful things that are coming online. So I feel like we live in a great era when it comes to theme parks. In the 30 years I've been doing this, I've never seen the kind of development, the kind of money being spent, the kind of I mean, I know the pandemic has kind of thrown a curveball at everything, but the pent-up demand is obviously out there, and I think that we're only going to see higher and higher attendance as time goes on. So it all bodes well for the industry and for fans like us. And 30 years into my journalism journey writing about parks, it is still not still, but it's even more of a wonderful time, and I feel like I have so much more to say and so much more to write about, and that's why I'm happy that a place like Substack exists so that I can continue writing because it had become so difficult to, as I said earlier, to with all the changes that are happening in journalism, it had become so difficult to maintain what I was doing. But I feel like I have a new lease on life, and I can reach out directly to fans and to people who love what I love and share my joy and my passion with them. And so it's kind of a new era for me, and I feel renewed and rejuvenated and ready to go.
Awesome. That is the passion that I've loved over the years, and why when I started this podcast in 2019, I was like, we got to get Arthur Levine on, and he's got to break his ironclad agreement with Coaster Radio and the season pass, and we got to get him on. So, Arthur, this has been an absolute blast. But about themeparks.fun, where else can everybody find you?
I am at About Theme Parks on Twitter and About Theme Parks on Facebook. Those would be the three places they could find me. I'll also be sharing, I'm going to continue to write for IAPR and Fun World. That, as I said before, is the business side of the industry, and I enjoy doing that. It's kind of distinct from the other writing that I'm doing, but I'll share all that on Twitter and Facebook and through my newsletter. But from here on in, I'm pretty much going to focus on my Substack newsletter, and so that's where people can connect with me at aboutthemeparks.fun.
I love it. Go subscribe to the newsletter, even if you're not jumping in at the financial level to start. Dip a toe in the water. You'll see how great these newsletters are. And again, you're going to be like me, and as soon as we're done recording this podcast, I'm going to go sign up at a more financial level. Arthur, you have my word on that. I promise.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. And again, I don't want anybody to feel like they have to do that. I'm happy to have people at any level, and but I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity today to come here and talk to the good folks at Coaster101.
I appreciate that. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster101 podcast. After you visit aboutthemeparks.fun, we're on the website too, but we haven't found a way to successfully monetize it like Arthur has. So coaster101.com, and we're on all the social medias at Coaster101 as well. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you can consume Coaster social media, we're there. If you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, telling your friends, telling your enemies, leaving 5-star reviews on Spotify and iTunes. We always love to read those, and we have a really somebody gave us 4 stars the other day, and it really upset me. So if you left a 4-star review on Spotify, tell us why. We're curious. But thanks, as always, to Justin Mabry of JM Music Designs for our theme music. Arthur, this has been fun. Come back anytime. We would love to have you.
I'd love to come back. And thanks again, Andrew. And thanks, everybody at Coaster101.
Awesome. We'll talk to y'all again soon. See ya.